Glory to God the Father and Son Yeshua Mashiach. 1 Kings chapter 10. Multiplication of wealth. When the queen of Sheba heard what was being said about Shlomo because of the name of Adonai, she came to test him with difficult questions. She arrived in Jerusalem accompanied by a very great retinue, including camels bearing spices and gold in great abundance, and precious stones. When she appeared before Shlomo, she spoke with him about everything on her heart. And Shlomo answered all her questions. Nothing was hidden from the king that he could not explain to her. After the queen of Sheba had seen all Shlomo's wisdom, the palace he had built, the food at his table, the manner of seating his officials, the manner in which his staff served him, how they were dressed, his personal servants and his burnt offering which he offered in the house of Adonai, it left her breathless. She said to the king, "What I heard in my own country about your deeds and your wisdom is true. But I couldn't believe the report until I came and saw for myself. Actually, they didn't tell me even the half of it. Your wisdom and prosperity surpass the reports I heard. How happy your people must be. How happy these servants of yours who are always here attending you and get to hear your wisdom. Blessed be Adonai your God, who took pleasure in you to put you on the throne of Israel. Because of Adonai's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king, to administer judgment and justice fairly." Then she gave the king 4 tons of gold, a huge amount of spices, and precious stones. Never again did there arrive such an abundance of spices as those the queen of Sheba gave to King Shlomo. Hiram's fleet, which had brought gold from Ophir, now brought in from Ophir a large quantity of sandalwood and precious stones. The king used the sandalwood to make columns for the house of Adonai and for the royal palace, and also lyres and lutes for the singers. No sandalwood like it has come or been seen to this day. King Shlomo gave the queen of Sheba everything she wanted, whatever she asked, in addition to the presents he gave her on his own initiative. After this, she returned and went back to her own country, she and her servants. The weight of the gold Shlomo received annually came to 22 tons of gold. Besides that which came from sales taxes, customs duties and assessments collected by all the kings of the mixed peoples and by the district governors. King Shlomo made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 15 pounds of gold went into one shield. He made 300 more shields of hammered gold, with 3 3/4 pounds going into one shield. The king put these in the house of the Lebanon forest. The king also made a large throne of ivory and overlaid it with the finest gold. The throne had 6 steps, a back with a rounded top, arms on either side of the seat, 2 lions standing beside the arms, and 12 more lions standing on each side of the 6 steps. Nothing like it had ever been made in any kingdom. All King Shlomo's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the utensils in the house of the Lebanon forest were of pure gold. None was of silver, for in Shlomo's time it was regarded as having little value. The king had a fleet of large Tarshish ships along with Hiram's fleet. Once every 3 years the Tarshish fleet came in, bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes and peacocks. So King Shlomo surpassed all the kings on earth in both wealth and wisdom. All the earth sought to have an audience with Shlomo, in order to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. Each one brought his present, articles of silver, articles of gold, clothing, armor, spices, horses and mules, and this continued year after year. Multiplication of horses. Shlomo amassed chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen. He assigned them to the chariot cities and to the king in Jerusalem. The king made silver in Jerusalem as common as stones, and he made cedars as abundant as sycamore fig trees are in the Shephelah. Shlomo's horses had been brought from Egypt and from Keva, with the king's agents having bought him from the dealers in Keva at the going price. A chariot from Egypt cost 15 pounds of silver shekels, and a horse 3¾ pounds of shekels. All the kings of the Hittim and the kings of Aram purchased them at these prices through Shlomo's agents. 1 Kings chapter 11. Solomon's foreign wives and concubines. King Shlomo loved many foreign women besides the daughter of Pharaoh. There were women from the Moabi, Ammoni, Edomi, Zidoni and Hitti, nations about which Adonai had said to the people of Israel, "You are not to go among them or they among you, because they will turn your hearts away toward their gods." But Shlomo was deeply attached to them by his love. He had 700 wives, all princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. Solomon's heart turned to false gods. For when Shlomo became old, his wives turned his heart away toward other gods, so that he was not wholehearted with Adonai his God, as David his father had been. For Shlomo followed Ashtoreth the goddess of the Zidoni and Milcom the abomination of the Ammoni. Thus Shlomo did what was evil in Adonai's view and did not fully follow Adonai, as David his father had done. Shlomo built a high place for Chemosh the abomination of Moab on the hill in front of Jerusalem, and another for Melech the abomination of the people of Ammon. This is what he did for all his foreign wives, who then offered and sacrificed to their gods. The rebuke of God. So Adonai grew angry with Shlomo, because his heart had turned away from Adonai the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice, and given him orders concerning this matter that he should not follow other gods, but he didn't obey Adonai's orders. So Adonai said to Shlomo, "Since this is what has been in your mind, and you haven't kept my covenant and my regulations which I ordered you to obey, I will tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. However, for David your father's sake I won't do it while you are alive, but I will tear it away from your son. Even then, I won't tear away all the kingdom. I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of David my servant and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen." The chastisement of God. Then Adonai raised up an adversary against Shlomo, Hadad the Edomi, of the royal line of Edom. Back when David had been in Edom, and Joab the commander of the army had gone up to bury the dead, having killed every male in Edom. For Joab and all Israel had stayed there 6 months, until he had eliminated every male in Edom. Hadad had fled, he and a number of Edomese servants of his father's with him, and gone into Egypt. At the time Hadad had been but a small boy. On their way, they passed through Midian and arrived in Paran, took with them men from Paran, and went on into Egypt, to Pharaoh king of Egypt. He gave Hadad a house, saw to it that he had food and gave him land. Hadad became a great favorite of Pharaoh, so that he gave him his own wife's sister in marriage, that is, the sister of Tachpenes the queen. The sister of Tachpenes bore him Genuvat his son, and Tachpenes brought him up in Pharaoh's own house, so that Genuvat was in Pharaoh's house along with Pharaoh's sons. When Hadad in Egypt heard that David slept with his ancestors and Joab the commander of the army was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Let me leave, so that I can return to my own country." Pharaoh asked him, "But what have you lacked with me that makes you want just now to go to your own country?" "Nothing in particular," he replied, "but let me leave, anyway." God raised up another adversary against Shlomo, Rezin the son of Eliada, who had fled from his lord Hadadezer king of Zoba. When David killed the men from Zoba, Rezin rallied men to himself and became the leader of a band of marauders. They went to Damasek and settled there, while he became king of Damasek. He remained an adversary as long as Shlomo lived, causing difficulties in addition to those of Hadad. He detested Israel and ruled Aram. Also Yerovam the son of Nevat, an Ephratite from Sarida, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, one of Shlomo's servants, rebelled against the king. Here is the reason he rebelled against the king. Shlomo was building the Millo and closing the breach in the wall of the city of David his father. Now this Yerovam was a strong, energetic man, and Shlomo, seeing how serious the young man was, made him supervisor over all the work being done by the tribe of Yosef. Once, during this period, when Yerovam had gone out of Jerusalem, the prophet Achiah from Shiloh spotted him traveling. Achiah was wearing a new cloak, and the two of them were alone in open country. Achiah took hold of his new cloak that he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. Then he said to Yerovam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself. For here is what Adonai the God of Israel says, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Shlomo's hand, and I will give 10 tribes to you. But he will keep 1 tribe for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city I have chosen from all the tribes of Israel. I will do this because they have abandoned me and worshipped Ashtoreth the goddess of the Zidoni, Chemosh the god of Moab and Milcom the god of the people of Ammon. They haven't lived according to my ways, so that they could do what was right in my view and obey my regulations and rulings, as did David his father. Nevertheless, I will not take the entire kingdom away from him, but I will make him prince as long as he lives, for the sake of David my servant, whom I chose, because he obeyed my mitzvot and regulations. However, I will take the kingdom away from his son and give 10 tribes of it to you. To his son I will give 1 tribe, so that David my servant will always have a light burning before me in Jerusalem, the city I chose for myself as the place to put my name. I will take you, and you will rule over everything you want. You will be king over Israel. Now if you will listen to all that I order you, live according to my ways and do what is right in my view, so that you observe my regulations and mitzvot, as David my servant did, then I will be with you, and I will build you a lasting dynasty, as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. For this offense, I will trouble David's descendants, but not forever." Because of this Shlomo tried to kill Yerovam, but Yerovam roused himself, fled to Egypt, to Shishak king of Egypt, and stayed in Egypt until the death of Shlomo. The death of Solomon. Other activities of Shlomo, all he accomplished and his wisdom are recorded in the Annals of Shlomo. The length of Shlomo's reign in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. Then Shlomo slept with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son became king in his place. 1 Kings chapter 12. The request to Rehoboam. Rehoboam went to Shechem, where all Israel had come to proclaim him king. When Jeroboam the son of Nevat heard of it, for he was still in Egypt, where he had fled from Shlomo, so Jeroboam was living in Egypt. But they sent and summoned him. Jeroboam and the whole community of Israel came and said to Rehoboam, "Your father laid a harsh yoke on us, but if you will lighten the harsh service we had to render your father and ease his heavy yoke that he put on us, we will serve you." He said to them, "Leave me alone for 3 days, then come back to me." So the people left. The foolish response of Rehoboam. King Rehoboam consulted the older men who had been in attendance on Shlomo his father during his lifetime and asked, "What advice would you give me as to how to answer these people?" They said to him, "If you will start today being a servant to these people, if you will serve them, be responsive to them and give them favorable consideration, then they will be your servants forever." But he didn't take the advice the older men gave him. Instead he consulted the young men he had grown up with, who were now his attendants. He asked them, "What advice would you give me, so that we can give an answer to these people who said to me, 'Lighten the yoke that your father laid on us'?" The young men he had grown up with said to him, "These people who said to you, 'Your father made our yoke heavy, but you, make it lighter for us,' here's the answer you should give them: 'My little finger is thicker than my father's waist.' Yes, my father burdened you with a heavy yoke, but I will make it heavier. My father controlled you with whips, but I will control you with scorpions." So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day, as the king had requested by saying, "Come to me again the 3rd day." And the king answered the people harshly, abandoning the advice the older men had given him. He addressed them according to the advice of the young men and said, "My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father controlled you with whips, but I will control you with scorpions." So the king didn't listen to the people, and that was something Adonai brought about, so that he could fulfill his word, which Adonai had spoken through Achiah from Shiloh to Jeroboam the son of Nevat. The revolt of the northern tribes. When all Israel saw that the king wasn't listening to them, the people answered the king, "Do we have any share in David? We have no heritage in the son of Yishai. Go to your tents, Israel. Care for your own house, David." So Israel left for their tents. But as for the people of Israel living in the cities of Yehudah, Rehoboam ruled over them. King Rehoboam then sent Adoram, who was in charge of forced labor, but all Israel stoned him to death. King Rehoboam managed to mount his chariot and flee to Jerusalem. Israel has been in rebellion against the dynasty of David to this day. On hearing that Jeroboam had returned, all Israel summoned him to the assembly and proclaimed him king over all Israel. No one followed the dynasty of David except the tribe of Yehudah. When Rehoboam arrived in Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Yehudah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 select soldiers, to fight the house of Israel and bring the rulership back to Rehoboam the son of Shlomo. But this word from God came to Shemaiah the man of God. "Speak to Rehoboam the son of Shlomo, king of Yehudah, to all the house of Yehudah and Benjamin and to the rest of the people. Tell them that this is what Adonai says: You are not to go up and fight your brothers the people of Israel. Every man is to go back home, because this is my doing." They paid attention to the word of Adonai and turned back, as Adonai had told them to do. The sin of Jeroboam. Then Yerovam built up Shechem in the hills of Ephraim and lived there. After that, he left and built up Penuel. Nevertheless Yerovam said to himself, "Now the rulership will return to the house of David. For if these people continue going up to offer sacrifices in the house of Adonai in Jerusalem, their hearts will turn back to their lord, Rehoboam king of Yehudah. Then they will kill me and return to Rehoboam king of Yehudah." After seeking advice, the king made 2 calves of gold and said to the people, "You have been going up to Jerusalem long enough. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." He placed one in Beit El and the other in Dan. And the affair became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one in Beit El and all the way to Dan to worship the other. He also set up temples on the high places and made Kohanim from among all the people, even though they were not descended from Levi. Yerovam instituted a festival in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, similar to the festival held in Yehudah. He went up to the altar in Beit El to sacrifice to the calves he had made. And he placed in Beit El the Kohanim he had appointed for the high places. He went up to the altar which he had set up in Beit El on the 15th day of the 8th month, in the month which he had chosen on his own, and instituted a festival for the people of Israel. He went up to the altar to burn incense.